there, Buttercups. Your resident T-Bell here. Welcome to Hark, 'tis the T-Bill. Let's dive in for that tea today, huh? So let's talk to the lead up of Mr. Collins' proposal. Kitty and Elizabeth are going through the house doing something, and that's when her mom and Mr. Collins walks up, and Kitty is just like, la 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 la, and Lizzie's like, please don't leave. Please don't leave. Okay. Well, that being said, they go to the dining room. Mama Bennett says, Kitty, come on, we got stuff to do. Mr. Collins wants to talk to your sister. And he's all smug because he's thinking, yep, I got her. Okay. Lizzie's like, no, he can say whatever he has to say in front of everybody. And Mama B is like, not today, ma'am. Sit down. And that is the worst part because she's like, I can't even say no right now. And then she shuts the door like crap. Now, at first glance, this scene is so important because it's hilarious, it's uncomfortable, it's absurd. But underneath, this scene explains women's economic vulnerability, male entitlement, social expectations, and the limits placed on female autonomy. Okay? Because Mr. Collins is the least romantic person in the room, and it is the least romantic proposal in literary history. He's proposing to Lizzie like he's filing paperwork, applying for a tax exemption, and fulfilling a bureaucratic obligation. Okay? Now, he's barely talking to Elizabeth about herself. Not, I find you this or this or this. Instead, he's discussing duty, social expectation, Lady Catherine's advice, practicality, and respectability. He's approaching marriage like an administrative task with upholstery. Okay? Now, Elizabeth, she sits and she listens to him because she already knows what she's going to say, and he is long-winded, we know. But she refuses him immediately as soon as she could speak, and this matters because refusing was dangerous because she was refusing security. She was refusing a clergyman, and that was risky, and she was refusing an heir to Longbourn, which was insane by Regency standards because she could have kept her family's home, had the kid, if she had a boy, the house would have gone to them. Okay? Now, this is where you see clearly that Elizabeth values respect, emotional compatibility, and intellectual connection more than she values survival economics, which sounds romantic, until Charlotte enters the story. Now, one of Austen's funniest reoccurring devices, right, is when men assume women don't mean no, okay? So literally, Mr. Collins is saying, well, you're playing hard to get, Elizabeth, and modesty requires refusal. Persistence will win. This reminds me of people I know, unfortunately. This is comedy, but it also exposes how women's words were routinely dismissed, okay? Now, she tells him in no uncertain terms, like, look, you are a respectable man. I am not going to play your feelings. I am the last person you need to marry. But Mama B, she spirals. And this is one of the funniest spirals in the series because from her perspective, Elizabeth is destroying financial stability, family security, and social opportunity. She may be ridiculous, but she is not irrational on this, okay? Because Austen in this time is turning the proposal scene into a cringe comedy, feminist critique, a class commentary, and an emotional incompatibility study all in one. And this is Austen's superpower. She's making you laugh while quietly exposing a broken social structure. Because when Mr. Collins realizes that Lizzie is serious and her mama spirals, and the funniest part about the spiral is that her mom thought for half a second, and I don't know why she did, that, well, I'm going to go tell her father, and her father will make him marry her. Absolutely not. So, after this all goes down, and she's spiraling, this causes her to spiral even more, I probably think. She goes and she says, Mr. Bennett, speak to your daughter. And so Mr. Bennett's like, okay, well, what's going on? Let me at least know what's going on here, ma'am. And she's like, yeah, Mr. Collins proposed and your daughter said no. And so he calls Lizzie. Lizzie says, yeah, that's what happened, da da da. And Mr. Bennett, he loves vexing his wife. He says to his wife, he looks at his wife and says to his daughter, so, madam, to Mama B, it is your position basically that if she doesn't marry him, you're no longer her mother. Yes. And so he looks at both of the ladies and he looks at Lizzie and says, okay, well, you're going to be a stranger to one of your parents. If you marry him, you're going to be a stranger to me. But if you don't marry him, you'll be a stranger to your mom. And the way they wrote it was a little bit better, because in the way they wrote it, it was, well, if you choose not to marry him, you are a stranger to your mother. If you choose to marry him, you will be a stranger to me. And we know that Lizzie prefers the company of her father anyways, so it's not even as if that was a total punishment. Now, that being said, Mrs. Bennett, Mama B, says, you know what? I'm out. That's ridiculous. But David Bamber's performance with this scene is iconic. He portrays nervous formality, physical awkwardness, sweaty desperation, and self-important politeness. He never plays Mr. Collins as purely evil. He's absurd, but socially manufacturedly absurd. Okay? So he's not a bad guy. He's just playing into society. And that is the biggest issue in this. And there's actually a perfect transition into Charlotte, because this proposal becomes much more powerful once Charlotte accepts him later. Because now, as an audience, we have to confront the fact that Elizabeth ideals versus Charlotte's realism. And this is where Austen refused to fully condemn either woman. And that's why she made this story feel modern. Because she wasn't saying one was right and one was wrong. She was saying they were both right. That being said, the proposal disaster is, well, it gets deeper than that, okay? Because the older you get, the more radical Charlotte becomes. She understands romance is uncertain, stability matters, and women have limited choices. And that makes you have to question, is Charlotte tragic or the most realistic person in the story? Because she's also pretty, extremely smart in this. Right after the debacle of Lizzie rejecting Mr. Collins, Charlotte has happened to come across and say, hey, I was coming to see Lizzie. And Lydia and Kitty say, yeah, there's a big old thing right now. Mr. Collins proposed. Lizzie said no. And she's like, yeah, I'm not surprised. And Charlotte says, oh, should I invite him to dinner? And they're like, yeah, please do. And Charlotte's very smart, because does she have the plan in mind, or is she just trying to be nice? We don't know. But now, up until this moment, when Charlotte says yes to Mr. Collins, we were thinking, well, obviously Elizabeth was right to reject him. And it's still an acceptable point. When Charlotte accepts him, Austen is forcing everyone else to confront survival, aging, gender restrictions, economic fear, and emotional compromise. So you go from social comedy to existential realism, okay? But before we can go too far into this, we need to, what is Charlotte Lucas like, right? Because she's not written as foolish. And that's the key here. Austen makes Charlotte intelligent, observant, emotionally mature, and fully aware of Mr. Collins' ridiculousness. And that means her choice was deliberate when she accepted his proposal, okay? I am not a romantic, And this is one of the coldest lines in the story because it sounds so calm. But she's actually smart, because she understands that beauty fades, opportunities disappear, unmarried women become socially vulnerable, and financial dependence is dangerous. She's not choosing love. She's choosing survivability, okay? Now, Elizabeth, as her best friend, takes this personally. She is horrified. Not because Collins is married, she could care less. It's the fact that Charlotte accepted a life that Elizabeth sees as emotionally dead. And because Elizabeth believes that, self respect matters, emotional connection matters, compatibility matters, Charlotte believes overall that security matters first. Now, neither woman is fully wrong. That's why the conflict hurts, because it's just like these two best friends are having a fight, but it's not a fight, right? Now, Mr. Collins is actually kind of a genius and kind of like Charlotte's father. I'm going to just throw that out there right here, okay? Because, yeah, he moves on from Elizabeth extremely fast because his proposal was never personal. He needed a wife-shaped position filled, and Elizabeth was there. Jane said no, there was no Jane, it was Elizabeth. And marriage is functional for him. He's only doing it because Lady Catherine de Bourgh says he should. And that rebound is he rebounded with the efficiency of a corporate hiring department, okay? Like, oh, you're in, you're out. And here's the thing. It's showing that Charlotte strategically married, okay? And we'll see why. Now, on top of everything going on, another hit comes to the family. And this one comes especially to Jane. Where she thought she had a good thing going on with Bingley. He liked her, she liked him. Except now they left. The whole party would have left Netherfield by the time she got this letter. And the sisters are trying to tell Jane that, hey, there's business in town. But in truth, that's not what happened. What happened was Caroline, Louisa, and Darcy talked Bingley out of choosing Jane. Not because of Jane, ironically. It was because of her relations, of the fact that Darcy wants Bingley and his sister to get together. Or that's what Caroline is trying to tell us. And that's what, Jane believes. And Elizabeth's like, no, he liked you. And now Jane's heart is broken. Okay, so this is yet another blow to the family in this moment. Okay. And that, it's not even just the money, if we're being very, very honest. It's the fact that Jane really did like him. And Elizabeth isn't reacting to the money part of it. She's reacting to her sister's hurt. But let's jump back into Mr. Collins and Charlotte, okay? So, while all this is going on, we see that eventually Lizzie is invited to Hunsford later, okay, by Charlotte. Charlotte really wants her there. And I don't blame her. Yeah, they're fighting, but that doesn't mean they're not friends at the end, right? And when Elizabeth does eventually visit Hunsford, you can see the strategy that she's using to manage her married life. Now, what is that strategy? Well, she keeps Mr. Collinson occupied, all right? She encourages his outdoor walks. She designs her daily life around minimizing exposure to him. What does that mean? Well, he goes to Rosings several times a week. Does it really need to be that often? Perhaps not. He deals with the outside stuff, so she might see him for a few minutes a day. And here's the insight that we need to remember, right? Charlotte's not naive. She is managing discomfort intelligently. She has her own home. She has a husband she doesn't have to see very often. And she has her own little room that even when they are in the house together, they don't spend that much time together, right? Now, Lucy Scott's performance as Charlotte brings restraint, practicality, hidden sadness, and quiet resignation. Now, this adaptation avoids portraying her as pathetic or villainous because she's deeply realistic. Because we have to ask, was Charlotte brave or defeated? I think she was brave. Is security without love still a kind of freedom? And absolutely it is. Because she had her own household. She didn't have to depend on her parents. And she didn't really have to see her husband. Does modern society still pressure people into practical relationships? I'd like to say actually we probably do. And not because of being, unkind. Because it seems like if something works, well, why would you break it up, even if they don't know the bad parts of it, right? Is Elizabeth privileged enough to afford romantic ideals? Honestly, I'm going to be very honest when I tell you that I don't know that she's privileged enough, or more so that she just doesn't care. Her father, she knows she's got her father's support. She knows that her and Jane are very close, and so if she never really did marry, she could go stay with Jane, she could help Jane with the kids, that kind of thing. And then another question of how much does money shape emotional decisions in Austen land? A lot. Because, as women in 2026, there are a lot of things that we are able to do that we were not able to do even in the 70s. But women then did not have that choice. They couldn't get a job and have a bank account and have their own house if they were, unmarried. Now, widowed, that's a whole different thing because they have the money from their husband. But as an unmarried woman, just from the start, no, no. Now, Charlotte's engagement is also really, really important structurally because it prepares the audience for Darcy's failed proposal later, which we don't know about yet, but it does prepare us because Austen is comparing a marriage without affection, right? Like what she would have had, with Mr. Collins, versus an affection poisoned by pride. Because let's be very, very fair, okay? Charlotte and Mr. Collins, they are practical without intimacy. And at this point, Darcy and Elizabeth would have intimacy without emotional maturity. Because the thing is that okay, what do we know about Darcy? Darcy is the person that he very much resides on his pride, on his family standings, on what society says is right. And that right there plays a huge part in his proposal. Charlotte Lucas is one of Austen's most devastatingly honest characters. This woman understands the system completely and she chooses survival anyway. She's not foolish. She's not weak. Regency England didn't give women unlimited chances, and that's why she did what she did. Now, let's talk about Jane and Mr. Bingley. Jane decided, with Lizzie's hyping, to go into London to get a change of scenery, if you will, after this whole debacle. Well, Jane, of course, sent a letter to Caroline and Louisa and said, hey, I'm here. We should hang out like you did. Well, after no answer, she takes her time and she visits. And the ladies there look shocked and actually tell her, like, you should have let us know you were here rather than just showing up. And Jane is confused because both her letters went astray. That's odd. And so several weeks after this, she was waiting, thinking that, hey, they were her friends. Well, Caroline makes a visit several weeks later, like I said, and she took no pleasure in visiting Jane. And when Jane did ask about Mr. Bingley, he essentially was not interested and he knew of her being in town. Which says, then, that, hey, Bingley no longer cares for Jane. But that is not the truth. The fact of the matter is that Darcy or somebody in the house intercepted those letters, and Bingley does not know that Jane is in town. Bingley thinks that Jane has given up on him. And they're trying to push Darcy's sister on Bingley, and Caroline is obviously trying to get not Bingley, Darcy for herself. What I'm trying to say here is that Jane and Bingley were bamboozled. They were bamboozled. And what that means is the people around him were making the decisions for him. Now, back with Elizabeth and her family back in the country, she finds out that Wickham is betrothed to a Miss King. Miss King has just inherited £10,000. And that's just what you did. But her sisters are upset, obviously, because they wanted Wickham. But Lizzie is still pro-Wickham at this point because she doesn't know what he did. We know she doesn't. That being said, she's like, yeah, you know what? I get it. You need to live too. And that's how these work. She's being more mature about it. But the biggest thing here is that she is still trying to see the best in Wickham because that is what he is presenting to her. But shortly, that will come to a close. Now, moving forward. We're going to move forward a little bit because remember, Charlotte has married Mr. Collins, and she has said, hey, please come and see me when my dad and my sister come and see me. You will be as welcome as both of them. And Lizzie's like, of course. So now she's going to leave her poor dad without, any thought because Jane's gone and she will be gone. And she's going to visit this cottage of Hunsford. And she's going to meet the Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Of course. Now, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, she walks into every room like, I personally invented civilization, right? And here's the thing. Lady Catherine is aristocracy without self-awareness. So she really believes that hierarchy equates to morality, rank equals wisdom, and wealth equals superiority. Okay? She truly thinks that just because she is who she is, everybody should pay attention and do exactly what she says. Now, anybody who knows anything about Lizzie will know that, hey, that's not going to fly. And this is where we get a glimpse into the life that Charlotte is living. Okay? Because Charlotte, like I said, is managing her time wisely. So she spends very little time with her husband, which I don't blame her. Just saying. It's a nice little cottage. It's not that far from Rosings. And it's clear that Collins is happy to see the sister and the father because honestly, he's so much like her father, it's ridiculous. She might as well have married her father. Now, we're going to hear so much about Rosings and Lady Catherine de Bourgh, but here's the thing. Lady Catherine de Bourgh herself was kind enough to suggest that these shelves be fitted exactly as you see them here. Shelves in the closet? Happy thought indeed. So yeah, they put shelves in the closet because Lady Catherine said, hey, put shelves in the closet. And they dine at Rosings Park twice every week. And they're never allowed to walk home, which is great. Because that means you are in, like someone likes you. Or what you can do for her. And they get to use the ladyship's carriage when they come back. So, yeah, this is a life for Mr. Collins. And then it tells us, too, that when we get to It's when we get to the Rosings. We see what Charlotte has to deal with twice a week. Okay? And that's just at Rosings. Because you know good and well that Lady Catherine de Bourgh does not just limit her instructions to twice a week at Rosings Park. Come on now, y'all. We know this. Okay, let's talk about the first visit to Rosings Park, y'all, because this is it went about as well as you would expect. Lady Catherine thinks, oh, you know what? Maybe she's like her friend and she does, she listens and she doesn't talk back. Yeah, no. Lizzie has her own opinions. She does not play. All right. And Lady Catherine clearly does not like her. And I think in that moment, you have to imagine that Mr. Collins is going, okay, good job. Good choice. Okay. Now, what's even better is that some days later, or maybe sometime later, Mr. Collins comes running up, says, "Hurry, guys, get back to the house because Mr. Darcy and his cousin are going to be at the house." And it's so cute because Charlotte's like, "Certainly not here for me. They must be here for you." Now, during that visit, she's talking to Colonel Fitzwilliam, right? And Lizzie just says, "Can you tell me why Mr. Darcy keeps staring at me?" And he stands up because he's like, now I got to say something. And when I tell you, this man looks amazing. Like, his eyes are darker, his hair. There's just something about him now. It's like he's acknowledged he's into her, even with everything else. But he's just like, yeah, I got to talk to her now. And of course, he brings up like the socially safe things like, oh, how's your family? Hope they're good. Everybody's watching them. Then she throws the bomb. She says, my sister's been in town these 3 months. Have you never happened to see her? And he just kind of like, no, I have not had that pleasure. And he walks to the window going, oh shit. Okay, well, everybody's watching us. I cannot be honest with this. And Lizzie's like, so you see, we are not the best of friends. And his cousin's like, what? I'm surprised. And she quotes his own line back to him, and he turns like, she'd be listening. And you can see this cousin Fitzwilliam, this Colonel Fitzwilliam, his cousin, is actively like, he likes Lizzie. He likes everything about her as far as he's seen because she is different. He says, oh, there's no playing, there's no noise. I've heard you sing and you play. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to disappoint you. I'm not that good. But what this tells me, okay, is that Darcy has probably talked about Elizabeth to his cousin, which is fair because you know what? That's what happened. And then he knows more. So when she's like, yeah, see, we don't even have that great relationship. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, that's weird. And Darcy's like, dude, don't say a word. And he's like, I'm good. But Darcy is now aware, like, she knows. She knows. And that is incredibly, probably dangerous for her to know. Not because she knows that what he did. She just knows that something is not right in this situation. And her intuition is going to point to Darcy at the moment. Now, remember how he was revealing information about himself without knowing it? Well, now he actually actively knows he is admitting information. And how does this happen? Okay, well, this is such a Darcy thing to do. The whole Rosings Park, Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy, Maria, Charlotte, Collins, all of them. Her daughter's there with her lady, right? And so Darcy is now realizing, like, man, they're kind of ridiculous. And Lady Catherine saying, "Oh yeah, I love music. You can practice in the servants' room. You won't be anybody's way there. And I have the best taste." And anyways, Darcy says, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go talk to her." He stands up and he goes over, and she doesn't quiver under him. She's just like, "So, do you mean to frighten me, Mr. Darcy, by coming in all this state to hear me?" She's not alarmed. Her courage rises, and he's playing the game. I love it. I know. He's witty. He's witty, and she's witty back. She's like, "Oh, Colonel Fitzwilliam, your cousin would make you not believe me." And I love that Colonel Fitzwilliam is watching this cousin of his, and I bet you he's like, this is not a Darcy that I know. And he loves this exchange. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe he has a thing. He develops a thing for Elizabeth. But I think he likes these interactions because it shows him a different side of Darcy. And Darcy is looking, going, "Oh, that sounds terrible." And he's ill qualified to recommend himself to strangers. But she's not letting him off the hook. She's okay, so let's ask him why a man of sense and education who has lived in the world should be ill qualified to recommend himself to strangers. And this is where Darcy drops a bomb. He is not someone that possesses the talent of conversing easily with strangers. Okay? And she's point blank telling him, "Well, I don't play this instrument as well as I should, but I think that's my own fault. I probably should have practiced more." Now, he is not upset about that. He's like, "You have employed your time way better than that, and you leave no one wanting." And his eyes are just this beautiful brown, y'all. And he rolls his eyes though when Lady Catherine says, "Oh yeah, I must have my share in the conversation y'all are having." He's realizing that it's not just her family that's ridiculous, okay? And it's hysterical because he legit is like, "Dang it, why did you interrupt my conversation with the girl I like, Aunt Catherine?" But that being said, we are I'm sorry, y'all. This man just straight up is in absolute like of her, and probably more, because she's writing a letter home, and he visits her while she's all by herself. Okay, she's all alone, and Darcy's like, "I beg your pardon. I would not wish to intrude upon your privacy." And she's just like, "Okay, so I was just writing a letter to my sister and Jane, that's all." And he's not saying anything. Like, you can tell, like, they don't want to discuss that. That is the elephant in the room. And it's such an awkward I laugh, okay? I'm not laughing meanly. I'm laughing because I recognize these signs. She's sitting, he's sitting. It's awkward. So awkward. And he's trying so hard to be talkative, communicative, right? But she's throwing questions at him that he doesn't want to answer. It's true. "Oh, is Bingley ever going to go back to Netherfield? If he doesn't, it would be better for the neighborhood if he should give up the place entirely." And Darcy is like, "Oh, he might if he finds any eligible purchase offers." And so they don't want to talk about that, but she wants to talk about it. He does. It's great. It's the elephant in the room. It seems like forever. Okay, it really does. But I guarantee you it was not that long that they were there. That he sat in that chair across from this woman, and he talked about everything but what he really wanted to say. Okay. Now we come upon the fact that he thinks that Mr. Collins has found a good match for him in Charlotte. And she's like, "Yeah, everybody was happy with it." And he's basically asking her how close she would happily be from her family. And so she essentially says, "Yeah, you could be too close to your family, And his eyes light up because he has a shot, okay? And I says, I shall trespass no on your time no longer. And he is like, okay, I gotta go now. I got the answers. I'm nervous. Bye. And he just leaves. Okay. And she's like, what just happened here? Okay. Just happened here. And she's confused. Now, she is attracted to him, but she's not willing to admit that attraction because at this point she's like, okay, well, he's a jerk. He's arrogant. He's done all these things. And look at what he did to Wickham. But we're going to see an event that even Darcy outdid himself on shortly. Good intentions would take away any positive thoughts that Lizzie had about Mr. Darcy. Okay, so let's rewind. His cousin, Colonel Fitzwilliam, is trying to talk Darcy up, all right? And what he tells Lizzie is that, hey, oh yeah, he recently saved Bingley from a terrible marriage. She's like, what do you mean? Oh, the objections to the ladies. And he's like, well, I mean, hopefully my cousin's triumph stays a triumph, basically. And Lizzie is heartbroken because she knows exactly who he's talking about. And she is realizing that Darcy had a role in breaking her sister's heart. Colonel Fitzwilliam does not know this. He just knows that she's unwell after hearing this news. Okay. Well, she has a headache, and the rest of them are going to Rosings Park. And Charlotte's like, I'll stay with you. And Colin's like, what? And she's like, no, guys. I'm good. Lizzie is like, I'm going to be fine. I just need to be home, essentially. And so Charlotte realizes that if she doesn't hurry her husband, they're going to be late. And so they leave, and Lizzie is by herself, at least with the servants. And she's just trying to process the information she's heard, right? But it's not long before there's another knock on the door. She's reading a letter, and guess who missed her at this dinner? Okay. If you guessed Darcy, like, you got it right. It should not have taken multiple things. And you can see she's visibly upset. And of course, Darcy comes walking in like, forgive me, I hope you are feeling better. And she is like, you are the last person I want to see. And he's got this wild look in his eye. Like, he was terrified he was going to find her worse, but he does find her in a state that he doesn't like, I think. She's not her usual self, and he does not like it. And he fidgets around for a second, walks around, looks around. He can't hardly look at her. And finally, he says something so out of pocket, but that is after he sits in a chair, pops up, and he can't help but pace the room. And she's just like, okay, dude, say what you gotta say, do what you gotta do. Sorry, y'all. I've seen it so many times that I know what he's doing. In vain, I have struggled. It will not do. And she's like, what? My feelings will not be repressed. And she's going, what kind of feelings? You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. Okay, y'all. This man is telling her, okay, it's a great start. It is a great start. In declaring myself thus, I am fully aware that I will be going expressly against wishes of my family, my friends, and I hardly need to add my own better judgment. So basically, he loves her, but against everybody's judgment. The relative situation of our families is such that any alliance between us must be regarded as a reprehensible connection. So, not hold on. It's not just against everybody's wishes, but it's a terrible connection he would put himself in. Indeed, as a rational man, I cannot but regard it as such myself. But it cannot be helped. So basically, she got a hold of his heartstrings, is pulling them, and he is forsaking everything. Almost from the earliest moments of our acquaintance, I have come to feel for you a passionate admiration and regard, which, despite all my struggles, has overcome every rational objection. I beg you most firmly to relieve my suffering and consent to be my wife. Okay, buttercups. Lesson 1 of social etiquette. Do not propose to a woman that you love, insulting her family, her connections, and the fact that all of that. Now, knowing Lizzie, she's sitting there and she's just processing. In such cases as these, I believe the established mode is to express a sense of obligation. But I cannot. I've never desired your good opinion, and you have certainly bestowed it on most unwillingly. I'm sorry to cause pain to anyone, but it was done. It was most, and I hope it will be okay, sorry. So she's basically saying, look, I didn't mean to hurt you. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not doing that. I'm sorry that if this causes you pain, but no. And his flabbers are gasted. She just told him no, y'all. She just told this man at 10,000 pounds a year of his status, no. And you can see it on his face. And he says, is this all the reply I'm to expect? She was saving him by not saying more. I might wonder why, with such low civility, I am rejected. You like her against your will, your reason, and even against your character, dude. Like, she wasn't even uncivil. And he's over here like, oh, I might have messed up. Now, besides every other reason she has, would she consider a man who ruined her sister? Okay. And she's like, can you deny that you have not done it? I have no wish to deny it. And there he goes, doubling down. I did everything in my power to separate my friend and your sister. I rejoice in my success. Towards him, I have been kinder than towards myself. He didn't even, okay, look, let's stop here for a second. He didn't even stop. He's like, okay, well, I'm doubling down because, you know what? I've been kinder to him than I have myself. But he could live. You know in your mind, he could live with everything else until she says of how she heard about Mr. Wickham's story and his dealings and asks, how can you defend yourself on that matter? And he's angry because it's not even about them anymore. It's not about her. It's about Wickham. And he's over here he's going through the rabbit holes, the tunnels of what is this man saying? What is this man doing? Why? And he says, this is your opinion of me. My faults by this calculation are heavy indeed. But perhaps his offenses might have been overlooked had your pride not your pride been hurt. And so he's basically throwing it back. Had I concealed my struggles and flattered you? And basically disguising is not his thing. He's not ashamed of his feelings. They were natural and just. Did he expect her to rejoice in the inferiority of their connections? To congratulate himself on the condition of relatives so low? Now, he's trying to take this, and she does the last word, y'all. She says, you are mistaken, Mr. Darcy. The mode of your declaration merely spared me any concern I might have felt in refusing you had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner. You could not have made me the offer in any possible way that would tempt me to accept it. From the very beginning, your manners impressed me with the fullest belief of your arrogance, your conceit, and your selfish disdain for the feeling of others. I had not known you a month before I thought you were the last man in the world whom I could ever marry. Okay, let's be fair and say that he has never heard anybody talk to him like that, and he is not happy with it. He cannot change anything except her view of Wickham. Okay, so now Darcy has been rejected. She destroyed him. Okay, she annihilated him. She's like, finish him in Mortal Kombat, and she did. Okay, but now Darcy is they're reliving the conversation in their head, and in the one thing he can defend himself on, it is the Wickham part. Okay, so he storms home and to Rosings, but he storms to Rosings, and he writes a letter. Okay, and he's disclaimer, this is not to repeat the sentiments you found so disgusting earlier, right? And he is going to clear the air on Wickham. Now, this is a bigger thing than just telling this woman that he loves that why. He is pouring out one of the biggest scandals of his life, and it has to do with his sister, which we know he truly cares for. Okay, but he, in this letter that he writes overnight, describes what this situation is. Okay, and here's the thing. You learn in this situation, because I don't want to give everything away, because somebody here might not have watched Pride and Prejudice. I probably should have put that disclaimer, right? But he had known Wickham a very long time. And the fact is that Wickham was not a good person, okay? And his father, Darcy's father, hoped that Wickham would make the church his profession. But the way he was as a womanizer was going to be an issue. Ugh, what a gorgeous man Mr. Darcy is. Anyways, when his father died, right, Darcy's father, he left Wickham a valuable family living. And so when it was vacant, but Wickham didn't want any interest in a church career, okay? So he took £3,000 instead of the living. That's still a good amount of money. Not quite Bingley status, but he had expressed intention of working in the law, and Darcy didn't believe him, but he was hopeful. So he gave him the £3,000, and he went on his merry way. And Darcy thought that would be the end of the story, but it wasn't, because Wickham had a contingency plan, and that contingency plan was Georgiana Darcy, okay, the younger sister of Darcy. Now, Wickham had nothing to hold him back, so he did what he did, and if you've seen it, you know that they met under the most painful circumstances that he tried to forget. Darcy did. Wickham tried and actually really did manipulate Georgiana to think she was in love with him. But thing is that Wickham was not in love with Georgiana. He was in love with her £30,000 that she would inherit. Okay? And because he's a charmer, he made friends, and the lady that was supposed to be taking care of Georgiana was helping Wickham. But Darcy put a kink in their plans because they were supposed to elope. And he caught them. Well, Georgiana didn't know didn't know that anything they were doing was wrong. And so she said something to her brother because she didn't want there to be any secrets. And Wickham left. He did not have the girl. He did not have the £30,000, and he did not have the ally. And Georgiana, just being 15, had to deal with the aftermath. And that's the hard part. Now, This is a completely different picture than what Wickham painted, isn't it? Wickham said something so dastardly, but he never actually said what the fact of the matter was, you know? Now, he also explains in this letter about how and why he separated Jane and Bingley. It wasn't even necessarily Jane or Elizabeth, to be fair. It was the rest of the family. Okay? And that's the hard part to deal with. Now, this letter, he hand delivers it to her. And it's a big thing for him to tell anybody this. Okay? He's trusting Elizabeth with information that nobody else knows. Just him and Georgiana and Wickham. Okay? Well, this letter is absolute genius. Okay? Because it's the real turning point. This is where everything turns. Because this is where Elizabeth does realize, like, she loves being right. She trusted charisma over evidence. And she really harshly misjudged Darcy. Right? And here's the thing. In that time, right, Elizabeth, Lizzie, is not going to share this. And she does tell Jane. But she says to Jane, well, later, when, heaven help us. Heaven help us. Okay, so the whole family wants to go to a whole camp full of soldiers, okay? Well, that being said, Lizzie's like, hey, Dad, that's a terrible, terrible idea. Do you know what kind of trouble? And he's like, well, your sister will just get over, have to get through it. Because first it was a whole family. Then Lydia is asked by the wife of the head of the camp or the army to go, and Lizzie tries to warn her dad. And her dad says, you know what, she's never going to be at ease until she does something stupid, and let her go. So he lets her go. But terrifyingly, scandal comes to their door. Okay? Because, guess what? Lydia elopes with Wickham. Okay? Now, mind you, before Lydia actually elopes with Wickham, there is this I don't know even how to say it. Not long after, she leaves Hunsford and Rosings Park, she goes home, and that's when everything goes down with Lydia wanting to go because she was invited. Now, not long after that, though, she goes with her Aunt Phillips, not Aunt Phillips, I'm sorry, her Aunt Gardner. And Aunt Gardner, they had to go to her childhood home, which is like 5 miles from Pemberley. Well, they're going around and exploring all the wildlife and all, not the wildlife, but everything around the scenery. And they're like, hey, you know what? The family's gone for the summer. You want to check out Pemberley? And she's like, if they're gone for the summer and that's what you want, Aunt, I'm good for that, right? Well, Darcy, who's not supposed to be home, is having his fencing lessons, trying to conquer everything that he's feeling with Elizabeth. And so Elizabeth visits his home, y'all. She visits, and but Elizabeth is loving this little mini vacation, right? She's tan, she's with the people that love her, that actually see her. And now, as Lizzie is looking over the land, and before they go to Pemberley, Darcy makes the conscious decision to ride ahead of the party. It's going to be Bingley, his sisters, and his sister. Okay, and y'all, it gets wild. Okay, it gets wild. Okay, so let's recap. Darcy's on his way to Pemberley ahead of the party. Lizzie is like, we shouldn't visit without a proper invitation. And she's like, okay, well, I guess if the family's not there, that's fine, right? So, y'all, this is okay. If you've ever watched Dirty Dancing, you know the end scene where she jumps and yeah, that's one of the scenes that you always remember. This scene here is phenomenal. Okay, and that's because they did something that no one else had done. Okay, so the lake scene, which we're going to talk about in detail, it does not exist in Austen's novel, and it became iconic. Okay? And this is why Darcy, becomes physically human, deliciously human. This is where his dignity does collapse, repression cracks, and the vulnerability appears. Okay? So he transforms from intimidating aristocrat to emotionally overwhelmed, very hot man. I'm sorry, that was my opinion. But this was his close. Now, I've heard, there are different fun facts around the way. But I have heard that this was his close. They wanted him to be naked. And he was not going to have it. That's not what they would do. So he did it, and he just peeled off the outer layer of his outfit. Okay, so he just had like his undershirt on and that. And now, the first time that Lizzie sees Pemberley, you can see it in her eyes that she loves this house. It is beautiful, and everybody around her, she's like, her aunt and her uncle, like, yeah, the mistress of Pemberley is going to have to put up with a lot, and her aunt goes, it's probably not going to be anybody that we know. And Lizzie just says, I don't think I've ever seen a house more happily situated. I like it very well indeed. And it's her face, y'all. It's her face to know that, one, she gave this up. Now, for good reason, she gave it up. But it's a beautiful house. And even her aunt says maybe the beauty renders its owner a little less, repulsive. And she goes, yeah, very little. She kind of laughs, but they go into the house. They're exploring the house. They're not expecting Darcy to be there at any point. I want you to understand that. So they're looking at this beautiful house and like, I'm sorry, I would live in this house. The library, the drawing rooms, everything is absolutely amazing. Okay. And Lizzie's just kind of looking at it as like, oh, okay, this could have been mine. And it's probably, it's probably bittersweet. But it's the fact that she did have her principles, and now she might kick herself a little bit, but she's not quite ready to admit she was wrong, because we know she likes to think she's right. And she looks at the lake, y'all. She looks at the lake, and we finally see, after this though, the pictures of little sister Georgiana. And she's a beautiful young lady, right? And the way the housekeeper just talks about Mr. Darcy, okay? He's handsome, he's accomplished, he's the best landlord, the best master. It's all in contrast to what Lizzie has ever thought or said about Darcy. But now they're on his home turf. That's the main difference that people didn't really think about, is that, he's on his own turf. And here's the thing. This housekeeper describes Wickham, he's like, oh, he's wild. He's been very wild. But the little mini portrait done of Darcy is so different from everything we see, because he's comfortable in his house. And he is a handsome gentleman. Very, very handsome. He's kind. And this kind of shocks all three of them. And she's known him since she was 4 years old and not ever heard a crossword. But he was good natured as a child, and so he's good natured now grown up. But he wasn't taught how to handle himself. He's the best landlord, he's the best master, and this is all news. And Lizzie's like, oh, I think I messed up. And that's where the aunt's looking at her like, I know something you don't know. Now, here's the thing. And Lizzie finally admits, like, maybe we were deceived by Wickham. Not saying that, not telling the aunt, like, hey, this is what happened. Literally saying, well, we might have been deceived by Wickham. And that, in that moment, the aunt's like, all right. She sees something. And that, to me, is phenomenal. Because think about that. It's easier for us on the outside to look at things and know than to be in the middle of it and know. And that's a good thing, that's a bad thing. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. It does not. So, I'm going to take a second, because when I describe this lake scene to you, I want to make sure that I have everything. My T's crossed and my I's dotted with little hearts. Now, first thing I'm going to comment on, which I should have commented on in the past, but it's new things every time. When he's riding up, he is on this light gray, like, dapple horse. And when I tell y'all, it is such a difference to his dark horse in the very beginning, right? Well, I think it's a dapple, but it could just be sweat. Anyways, it's a light gray horse. Okay. Now, we watch him take off his top hat, his gloves, his outer coat, and his shoes. She's still touring the house with the family, and she's just in awe of everything. And this man is slowly taking off the things that will hold him down harder in the water, okay? He is not going to look, okay, there he goes with his coat, his vest, he's sitting. And yes, this was not a part of Austen's novel, okay? So now they're supposed to look kept, okay? That means, like, no one, the shirt's gotta be tucked in. They have to be, like, fully and outwardly dressed. He undoes the top button. He even leaves the shirt tucked in, shoes off, and he jumps, after some thoughts, into this water. And I would never jump in a pond, but again, that's me. I'm just not at the waters. If I can't see in the water, I'm not getting in there. Lizzie is admiring the gardens, the statues, the landscape, and here he walks up, his outer clothes in his hand, his shirt see-through, his shirt pulled out, comfortable, top hat in one hand, a man holding the horse in the other. And so the horse goes back to the stables. You can see through this man's shirt. Oh, he's walking through the field, and it's just like deliciousness. I'm sorry. Back. Okay. So he's walking back. Now, remember that neither Lizzie nor Darcy are expecting to see each other. So Darcy's just like, whatever, no one's at my house. I can do what I want. And it's like, boom. Their eyes meet. She sees him. He sees her. Look at that chest. And they stop. Mr. Darcy. Miss Bennet. He's shocked. Like, it takes him a second. She's like... So she's just like, we didn't think you'd be home. And he's like, I returned a day early. Like, they're trying to explain. And... she's keeping her eyes on his face, and he's just like, oh, I am not properly dressed. So he's trying to have a conversation with her, which I'm pretty certain I would maybe 50% of the time keep it on his face, maybe his chest, the other 50. And he's just like, oh crap, and your parents are in good health and all your sisters, like he asked twice. He's so nervous. And she's nervous too, but she's trying to hide it better. She's just good at it. And he's like, excuse me? If he could have ran, I think he would have. So, watching him leave. Anyways, so her aunt and uncle are like, that's just the man. Perhaps a little less formally attired. She's like, we gotta go. We gotta go. We got to go. And she's like, I wish I'd never come. And she's power walking to the carriage. What must he think of me? He inquired after my parents, and now he's running, y'all. He's running. He knows she's a track star and this. And he's like, I'm going. Hurry, hurry, hurry. And so he meets them at the carriage. They read each other so well. I love it. Anyways. So he stops him. He stops him from leaving. She's like, can you please let me leave? He's like, please let me apologize. You were not leaving. We were, sir. I think we must. I hope you were not displeased with Pemberley. And that's such a loaded question. Not at all, sir. Then you approve of it. Very much. I think, but your good opinion is rarely bestowed, and therefore more worth the earning. Come on, Darcy. This is a Darcy in love, y'all. This is Darcy in love. Would you do me the honor of introducing me to your friends? Y'all, this man's in top 10 love right here. My sister Jane stayed at their house in Cheapside. He's not even looking bad about it. He's just like, hey, Delight, I hear you're staying at Lamberton. And he's so different. He's relaxed. He's gorgeous. Anyways, they're talking about, the area, and Leslie's just watching him like, this is not the guy that I remember. So he's like, hey, you should come and fish in my trout stream. And she's just like, what? Who is this man? And he's like, I'll provide you the rods and tackle, show you the best spots. Let's go. Let's go. Look at him now. Follow us, Sunday. And I love it because Lizzie's like, I don't know who this is. I'm as astonished as you are, Aunt. I can't imagine what has affected this transformation. Can you not? She knows, y'all. She knows. And it's so cute because Aunt and Uncle go. Aunt's like, come on. We gonna give him a little space, okay? She's like, and he is like, yes. Hey there, Lizzie. What's up? Let's go this way. And they're so nervous. I love it. I just adore it. And she's like, you were unexpected. If we had known you'd be here, we would not have dreamt of invading your privacy. And he's like, don't feel bad. And I'm glad that I didn't tell them I was coming. He had business with the steward, so he rode on ahead of the rest of the party. He's so cute because now he wants to claim an acquaintance with his sister. And it's like, okay, y'all, you mean to tell me months ago he insulted her and she just threw it back at him. And now it's like, hey, I'm glad you're at my house. I want my sister to meet you. Do I ask too much to introduce my sister to you during your stay at Lambton? And she's like, no, I should be very happy to make her acquaintance. Your future sister-in-law, ma'am. He's looking. He's like, I get to look at you now, haha. And it's cute, y'all. It's cute. And Aunt Uncle, like, look, that hand. He gets her in the carriage, right? She sits. She's like, thank you. And he's like, okay, I hope we shall meet again very soon. Good day. And Aunt's like, I know something you don't know. Now, it's like, he's like, now she turns around and she's like, I don't know. She's smiling kind of. And he's like, she's like, I don't know who this is, but I like this guy. Okay, sorry. That's the lake scene for y'all. And I maybe didn't do it justice. I need you to watch it, okay? Because it did him justice. Okay, it did. It so did. Now here's the thing. We meet Georgiana Darcy and she's quiet, she's shy, and she's basically telling on her brother. Lizzie is like, yeah, sure, I'll play for you, but your brother has grossly exaggerated my talents, no doubt for some mischievous reason of his own. And she's like, no, my brother never exaggerates. So she sees him in like in a different way, and I think that's what this is great. Okay, now she is talking so many kind things about having this wonderful brother, and Lizzie's like, okay, like you can see it. Well, you're gonna have a sister soon, Georgiana. Don't worry, because she's like, I should have liked to have a sister. And Bingley's just so happy to be like, hey, you're not 5 miles from Pemberley. How you doing? And now you know what he wants to ask about. Okay, so and your family, very well, sir. Yes. And he, pray tell me, are all your sisters still at Longbourn? All except one. And his face, she's like, oh, my younger sister, Brighton. Ah, his face is like, okay, it's not Jane. We could. Anyways, Bingley is taking attention, and Georgiana is speaking to Darcy. And Bingley's just so happy to see her. He missed her. You know, he's like, it's been above at least 8 months since we have not met since the 26th of November when we were dancing at the ball at Netherfield. And he's like, I don't think I can remember a happier time than those short months I spent in Hertfordshire. And so Darcy's like, hey, my sister has a request. And like looking at Darcy there, I would say yes. I'm sorry, just yes. So she says, hey, my brother and I would love it if you and your aunt and uncle could come to dinner, right? And this is going to vex Caroline greatly. And she's like, yes, tomorrow would be great. And Darcy's just like, okay, he's relaxed. And we have to, and shall we hear you play? If you insist upon it, yes, you shall. And Darcy just watching her play. He's so happy. He's not quite smiling big, okay? He's smiling like a man in love, okay? It's just that small, contented smile, okay? The aunt is listening. They're all listening. And Caroline is like, bump this. I want her to leave. And Louisa's like, not saying a word. And then Darcy and the uncle's like, yep, I see it. He loved the girl. And I love it because Georgiana is just like, yay, like, good job. And he's still smiling. Darcy is still smiling. Caroline's so vexed. And Louisa's husband is drunk. But let's just... Well, somehow, Lizzie convinces Georgiana to play because she's a little like nervous. And sorry, I was just okay, I got sidetracked because I was thinking Darcy. Anyways, it's the way that they're both looking at Darcy, and he's like, wait, what are you looking at me for? But she does convince Georgiana to play. And Georgiana's like, well, do I have to sing? And Darcy's a little concerned. And she's like, you know what? You don't have to sing if you don't want. And anyways, I'm going to tell y'all, this is what cinches Darcy and Elizabeth, okay? Before anything else, all right? Caroline brings up Wickham, okay? First, she's insulting them by saying, oh, you know, the militia leaving is a great loss, and Lizzie's just trying to be nice about it. And she brings up Wickham. Now, Darcy is just sitting there comfortable, y'all. He is literally just chilling, and Lizzie's like, please do not bring this up. And Caroline's like, what now? So instead of, you know, Darcy is about to jump up to, because his little sister was upset. But Elizabeth was like, I got you. So she goes, how can you play if I don't flip the pages? And they just share this look. And that smile, like he almost just straight up smiles, and his eyes like, okay, I know. Look, I'm fangirling. I get it. It's a fictional character. I don't care. If you like the movie as much as I like the movie, it's a smile. This right here cinches it. Caroline, you're out. Okay? You're out. Now, they leave for the night, all right? And Darcy just watches. Darcy's like, I'm utterly in love with this woman. She's the one. Okay? She is the one. Now, mind you, Caroline, oh, bless her heart, Caroline is going to try. How very ill Eliza Bennet looked this evening. I've never in my life seen someone so much altered as she is since the winter. And of course, Louise is hyping her up, right? And so, what do you say, Mr. Darcy? I noticed no great difference. She is, I suppose, a little tan. Hardly surprising when one travels in the summer. Now, Caroline's trying to go in for the kill, saying she never saw any beauty in her. Her features are not handsome. Her complexion has no brilliancy. Her teeth are tolerable, she supposes, but nothing out of the common way. Now, Darcy has this look of like, and as for her, okay, sorry. She pulls in the fine eyes comment, right? Darcy is trying to hold back what he's got to say. Bingley is going, sis, what are you doing? Right? And she just continues. She's not reading the room. The only person on her side there is Louisa. And Darcy sits there and he quietly does not say a word. Not because he's trying to be nice. And she's shooting her shot to say that, hey, she was this. But now Darcy is speaking. So how this starts? Let's start this. There's a tirade, and Caroline goes, I even believe you thought her rather pretty at one time. Yes, I did, he says. He stands up, but that was only when I first knew her. For it has been many months that I've considered her one of the most handsomest women of my acquaintance. Okay, look. The look on Caroline Bingley's face when he says that is like drops. And now then we see him with the candlelight going to that room to basically relive this moment with his two dogs. Now, you could have had me with the reliving the moment, but you brought your dogs. I'm here for it. Anyways, he walks into this room and he stands. He's really, truly reliving it. He's putting it to memory. He's remembering the way that that look. He's so relaxed, y'all. He's so relaxed. He is truly a man in love. And the thing is that, don't get me wrong, he was handsome before. Yes, he was sort of a jerk. I get it. But he wasn't really a jerk. He was an socially anxious, awkward nerd that didn't have words back then to say it that way. But now he's coming into a feeling of like, hey, I'm fine. Ugh. But then, of course, in this lovely bubble, someone has to pop it. Thank you, Lydia. Okay, so Lydia has run off with Wickham to Scotland to get married. Okay. Now, Lizzie is reading this letter. And back home, though, when they found out, the whole family's in uproar. This would ruin the whole family, okay? And the only one who kind of wasn't completely surprised was Kitty. But that being said, Jane is like, please come home. We have to deal with this. And so Lizzie's like in the middle of this letter when Darcy comes upon her. So he sees her upset and he's like, hey, find the gardeners. So he's trying to find out why she's upset. And she point blank tells him, because he's already been involved with Wickham, that, yeah, Lydia and Wickham eloped. And Darcy is not showing his upsetness. He's being the rock. And he's like, how can I help? What can I do? She's like, there's nothing to do. You can help. There's nothing here. Absolutely nothing. We are ruined. We are all ruined. So when he leaves, she thinks, you know what? I'm never going to see him again. But that is so far from the truth, because what he did instead is that he went on a mission, y'all. He literally he went back to his, Pemberley after, Lizzie and them are leaving, but he left. He went to London and he left. He did the work, he found the people, and he eventually found Lydia and Wickham. So, that being said, he is like, nah, dude, you're going to get married, you're going to go to the north, and you're going to just get out of our hair. So what does he do? He pays so that Wickham can get into the army. He makes sure they're married. And he pays for everything. Now, why? Because he feels like this is his fault. If he had said something, then this would have never happened. So, Lydia, now, the one thing they want to do before they, go to the north is visit, her family. And her dad's like, well, I guess if I have to, basically. But here's the thing. No one is telling Elizabeth why the in details, if you will. They are literally just saying, oh yeah, well, they're married, they came back married, and they did this. And so it slips from Lydia that, like, yeah, Mr. Darcy was there. So Elizabeth's like, what? What are you talking about? So she goes to her aunt. Okay, now when she her aunt's like, didn't think it was that big of a deal, but here's this. Okay. So that being said, right, this is where Lydia was funny, and then she became terrifying, because now her flirtation had consequences. The reputation that she was building was going to destroy the families if it wasn't fixed. And honestly, women had almost no safety net. So if Darcy hadn't tried to find her, then she really truly would have been lost in London. And if Wickham had left her, she would have been cast out. Now, during this time, while Darcy is off trying to find them, the family is being visited, especially they were visited by the Collins. And basically, Mr. Collins is like, oh, it'd be better if she was dead. And it was like, really, dude? Just go away. And so now they find out, though, that Wickham was as wicked as everybody was saying, because he had debts everywhere. Now they're finding out the truth that people are now saying. Now, they do pan to a room where there's Wickham and Lydia. And Lydia's just like, I can't. She's excited. She does not know that they've really done anything wrong. She's excited to go home and all this good stuff. And they're not yet married. That's the thing. And he never intended for them to be married. He literally was going to use her. That is the point here. He was going to use her. Until Darcy caught them. And when Darcy found them, Darcy made sure that that was not the case. Right? Now, we move on to the point. She comes home married. And this is where Lydia, of course, in her brazenness, says something to the lines of, well, I'm a married woman, so I go first, in front of Jane. And Jane steps back. But karma's going to come and get you, my dear. Because Lydia, you don't get to do that. So when Lizzie does find out, like, it was all Mr. Darcy, and why, her uncle wasn't allowed to pay anything, she's, I believe, fallen even more, because she's thinking, you saved my family, and, all that. But the big thing comes when Darcy and Bingley come back to Netherfield. When they come back to Netherfield, of course, they visit the Longbourn home. When they visit the Longbourn home, though, there is obvious testing to see if there are still feelings on the part of Jane. And so But Darcy eventually says, okay, Bingley, I gotta tell you something. Which he tells him. And so Bingley's like, she was there the whole time? What? Because I was wrong. I should have never interfered. Go get her. Bingley's like, do I have your blessing? And Darcy is essentially like, do you need my blessing? He's like, well, Bingley just looks at him unsure, like, well, I don't, but I would like to have it nonetheless. That breaks it. So Darcy's like, yeah, you got my blessing. So they go, and Darcy's leaving for town or whatever the case is. He's leaving in this carriage. Bingley's like, get my horse, man, get my horse. So he rides over and he proposes to Jane right that day that Darcy is leaving. So of course that's done. And Bingley comes over and of course they're engaged. So they have a little more, freedoms. Not a lot, but some. And Darcy is just watching Elizabeth. And it's so cute because you're like, man, he's thinking, I really would love to have a little more time with her. Well, y'all, eventually they're walking. It's Darcy and Elizabeth, Bingley and Jane, and then Kitty goes to see Mariah Lucas, okay? And so they're so nervous because Lizzie's basically like thanking him for saving the family. And he goes, you can thank me, but I didn't do it for your family. I did it for you. And she just kind of looks at him. And he says, if your feelings have changed, you let me know. I will never say another word, but mine have not changed, and I still love you. And so she admits that she loves him too. But here's the thing. The difference in the second proposal to the first one is ginormous, isn't it? Because he doesn't have this grandiose thing, does he? He goes, hey, look, I know this happened, but if you still want me, my feelings haven't changed. And here's the thing. I love it. They have a double wedding and they leave, and Mrs. Bennet's like, oh, 3 daughters married, and she's got Kitty and Mary left. But here's the biggest thing, y'all. The overall point of this is that they survived so much that, holy moly, to see Darcy in the beginning to Darcy at the end, it's phenomenal, okay? But I'm sorry, I did forget one kind of important thing. My bad. Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Okay, I cannot believe I forgot this. But prior to all of them walking down the lane and Darcy proposing for a second time, like the night before, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who is not the biggest fan of Elizabeth, strolls into their house and demands to know, are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted? And she gets into a verbal match with Lizzie, and Lizzie is not having it. She says a lot to this effect. But when Lady Catherine says, well, has my nephew asked, basically, are they engaged? And she's like, no. And Lizzie's all surprised, like, what? He wants to be married to me? That's weird. But Lady Catherine relaxes a little bit when she says, oh, okay, you're not, he hasn't asked you to marry him, great. Well, will you say no if he does? And she's like, no. He's a gentleman, I'm a gentleman's daughter. Well, Lady Catherine leaves in a huff. And that's something that he says to Elizabeth when they're walking. He says, when she was trying to make a point to say that she wouldn't accept it, right? But she really made it a point that it was true. But the fact that he goes, I knew that if you were wholly against me, you would have said something to her because you are not quiet about that. And she goes, yeah, no, you know me too well. The fact is that he looked at his family realizing that they are just as insane as her family. And it took him this long to realize. I know you've probably noticed on this episode that I was a little less structured than usual. And that is because you can't put me on a topic like Pride and Prejudice 1995 version and not expect some fangirling and some, unstructured feelings. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed this. If there's anything you notice, please put it in the comments. I am happy to look for these little nuances. Anyways, if there's anything you want to add, anything you want to, whatever, I look forward to it. Anyways, ta-ta, buttercups. Buttercups, I thank you for listening and for being a part of this journey with me. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you have a great week ahead. Now, should you have any questions, comments, or, maybe future topics, you can email me at harktistheteabell@gmail.com. You can locate me on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. And please remember that this is a one-woman show. So, as we go on this journey together, you are growing as I grow. But until next time, buttercups.